Hi, Dan Stein here. It is Thursday, March the 1st, coming to you, FAIR's Legislative Live. I'm joined by R.J. Hammond, who's FAIR's Government Relations Director, and we're going to give you some updates on the latest legislative happenings here in Washington. First, I want to remind you that tomorrow, 1 o'clock, same time, I'm going to be talking to you in our Talkback Live to get your feedback on what FAIR's doing, what we're doing well, what could use improvement, what works for you, what kind of information you want, what new tools you'd like to see. Our best chance to go to you, the customers, the people who make our whole movement go, to make sure we're serving your needs at their very best. So make sure you're here tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Many of you have already sent in good questions, good observations, good suggestions. I thank you for that. I'll be addressing those as well. Should be a lot of fun. I might walk around the office. You can see some of the offices while we're doing this. Looking forward to it. So as we move forward, got your comments here coming across, and always love to get your comments and questions now on what's happening on the immigration issue. And I see some of you are starting to comment already. Looks like the immigration issue has receded from public view right now because the deadline for DACA expiration continually gets upheld by district court judges who are going way outside the bounds of their authority and joining a program that was illegal in the first place, had no statutory or constitutional authority, but they have tied the hands of the Trump administration, at least for the time being. And RJ, how has that really taken the steam out of the initiative on the Hill?
Yeah, again, you saw all those proposals several weeks ago failed in the Senate. There really seems to be no appetite to put something on the floor right now. You know, you pair basically that tragic action which happened with that shooting, the calls for gun control is kind of taking some space right now in the agenda that's going on. But again, obviously, Dan, as Dan said, the original deadline for DACA that they gave Congress to come up with a fix, if you will, of March 5th is kind of out the window now. But however, there is another deadline, important deadline that is coming up. And we've been talking about the attempts always to attach an amnesty to a spending bill, as we have kind of the mother of all spending bills coming up. We have a March 23rd deadline where we must pass an omnibus spending bill to fund the government through the end of the fiscal year. And like clockwork, for like the fifth straight time, there's calls right now in the Senate to attach a DACA amnesty to that spending bill. Even a proposal, a framework has already emerged led by Jeff Flake, who again couldn't even run for re-election because his views on immigration are so extreme and outside the mainstream.
I thought he's running for president.
Oh, he might. Yeah, he's going to New Hampshire, and I don't think there's any constituency anywhere in the country for his worldview.
That's a laugher.
But what Flake's trying to do is do an extension of the existing DACA population program for the existing DACA population for about 3 years, which would put it into President Trump or a potentially Democratic president's next first term.
Kamala Harris.
I mean, that's a very extreme situation, but it would be a 3-year extension in exchange for chump change for border security. Just, I think,
so
around.
Do you think Trump would be satisfied with getting a few bricks for the wall in exchange for a DACA?
Well, I sure hope not. Even if you're talking even $25 billion, which would construct the wall completely in exchange for an amnesty for maybe 1.8 million people, I think that's a terrible deal for the American people. Doesn't address chain migration. Doesn't give American people any relief from mass legal immigration. And again, you have to remember a wall is very helpful down in the border, but when you have over 600,000 people overstaying their visas every year, the wall doesn't help in that respect. You need mandatory E-Verify so those people can't work.
So, I mean, is there any chance that the Trump administration might decide to step back from this amnesty proposal of 1.8 million?
Potentially. I think we're seeing that already. But here's what we have to understand with the political dynamics with this omnibus spending bill. You know, the Senate really could put the Trump administration in a bind where they're forced, if a bill comes to the president's desk, again, that fully funds the government and also has an amnesty component in it. That puts them in a bind. The president has to say, then essentially, even though, these senators are kind of injecting immigration into unrelated must-pass legislation, funding our government, keeping the lights on, the administration would be in a bind if they have a choice to fund the government and they also have an amnesty attached to that. It would be a tough thing. So again, we're really hopeful. A lot of talk coming out of the House, everything we've heard from, the Speaker's office and people in the House is they want, if they're going to do some type of DACA deal, whether it's a good lat bill or address it, it will be done independently. It'll be done separate from a spending bill. But Mitch McConnell's been mum on this in the Senate, and you've heard a lot of members over there, people in leadership, Cornyn, Thune, talking about addressing this now, even though the deadline is not there anymore. What's the point? The amnesty for DACA recipients, or even beyond that, delivers nothing for people who voted for Republicans or will vote for Republicans in the upcoming midterms.
So the president promised he was going to build a wall. He's going to build the wall. He said he was going to build the wall. President promised that we were going to have strong interior enforcement.
Right.
He's going to take it to those sanctuary jurisdictions. Here we have the mayor of Oakland tipping off people there illegally that ICE is going to come in and do raids. This is obstruction of justice. She's actively interfering with federal enforcement operations.
Right.
Trump administration should be taking the lead on these kinds of things. Why are we spending a lot of time on DACA and trying to get a few dollars for the wall?
No, I agree.
And the Republicans in Congress, every time we start talking about, we can't read your whole comment, Noel. It's kind of long, but I'll check it out later. Every time we make progress on enforcement, big industries like agriculture demand these massive guest worker programs for things like the mandatory E-Verify usage.
Right, yeah, no, there's every industry is looking for a carve out. You know, again, when you're dealing with a comprehensive piece of immigration legislation like Chairman Goodlatte's H.R. 4760, the Securing America's Future Act, which has a lot of good things in it. Again, mandatory E-Verify ends chain migration, truly, not like the president's framework. Gets rid of diversity visa lottery, ramps up interior enforcement, and then does do a very limited DACA piece. But what you have is to get those things, again, like you said, you have these industries, for example, the ag industry, was basically holding the bill hostage if all of their concerns weren't addressed by instituting a brand new agriculture guest worker program. They were saying, again, we're going to threaten people and withhold large blocks of votes from a lot of ag districts and prevent you from doing E-Verify if you are not to give us a mass, uncapped new ag guest worker program.
So in the House, we could see an expansion of the guest worker program as well as a possible expansion of the amnesty?
That is quite possible. Again, they're in a unique situation in the House as they're trying to whip votes
Why
on
do
the
they
Goodlatte bill.
expect people to vote Republican if they don't deliver what they promise? Why would you vote Republican when they don't deliver what they promise?
No, it's a very good point. And right now, I mean, with that bill, they're only sitting at maybe 170, 180 people. You need about 216 to vote for it right now. So what they're doing, you have to remember, again, the Goodlatte bill, while it does have an amnesty component in it, a limited one, it is the best proposal out there that seeks to address the DACA population and institute many of the other reforms that the president has called for. It's by far the best. Compared to everything in the Senate, it is by far the best. However, you can't even get there. And what they're trying to do right now is potentially increase the size of that amnesty in an attempt to bring a lot more of the moderate, squishier Republicans on this issue on board.
But then you lose the good conservatives.
That's the catch. That's why it's a very delicate balancing act, and the bill's fate is frankly up in the air because you're right. You go from 690,000 for 3-year renewable work permits, no path to citizenship, to 1.8 million, possibly more. It could be up 2.53. We don't know how big that population is. With a path to citizenship, that's a no-go for at least 75 Republicans.
So that ultimately would suspend all immigration enforcement for several years. It would take away from benefits that would actually be available to people who respected the law. I mean, the problem with these programs is they not only prejudice American citizens,
Right.
hardworking families, but they also prejudice people who are respecting the law.
Right.
Because there are fewer resources designed to serve those needs.
Absolutely. From an administrative standpoint and prioritizing things is, USCIS is going to get a rush of applications and they're going to be, jumping through hoops to adjudicate the claims of this program that was just created as a lot of people who have been waiting in line and are going through our regular proper channels are kind of pushed to the side as they try to adjudicate these claims. And again, as when you're dealing with millions of people, 1.8, 2, 2.5, I mean, that's from a resource standpoint, how do you vet all those
administrative
people?
resources.
Absolutely.
Jose, you have it right. We need to reduce legal immigration as well. Proud of you. Good comment. Yeah. I mean, you wonder how it can be that the elites in this country continue to believe we need massive unskilled labor at a time, and they're saying, well, our economy is going to be creating all these poor-paying jobs,
Right.
lousy jobs. Why does the United States want to be in the business of creating all these low-wage jobs, which are ultimately subsidized by taxpayers?
Well, we have to remember, too,
Hey, Beth says 10-year moratorium on all immigration. We talked about that concept, except for immediate family, back in 1991. Glad Beth is listening. Thanks, Beth.
Well, the American people too right now are finally seeing the benefits, of a tighter labor market. We've seen, wage growth, I believe in January was up 2.9% over the previous year. And I believe the unemployment rate was at its lowest point maybe in 10, 15 years. So Americans are finally, seeing the impact of President Trump's illegal immigration enforcement agenda, and also potentially the talk of reducing legal immigration down the line, and USCIS, who is tightening things up when it comes to legal immigration. But, just to show again how out of touch people are, Rand Paul in the Senate is floating a proposal right now to exempt H-1B spouses and children from the cap, and also double employment-based visas. So again, right when Americans are seeing some sort of relief, you still have the same hands in the Republican Party and even in progressive groups as well, calling to increase legal immigration. You have about 4 million young Americans enter the labor force every year.
Right.
And you have all these people who want to crowd them out from the same opportunities. The jobs are scarce. Labor market is tighter.
Folks on their comments are saying, if you talk about expanding guest worker programs, why won't Congress address birthright citizenship? Because that used to be a conversation back even 2008 or 9.
Right.
It's a concomitant to expanding guest worker programs. You got to fix birthright citizenship, but there's no conversation about that right now.
Absolutely not.
It's hard to imagine how the Republicans in Congress are failing to lead in this process, that they're not helping Trump at all. I mean, who would you say is really trying to help Trump in Congress?
Well, again, the people who I think Trump isn't helping Trump himself enough in Congress. Again, when he rolled out his framework that was introduced as the Grassley legislation that was voted down several weeks ago, again, that framework was woefully inadequate. It did not line up with a lot of the principles that he laid out back in November and that he ran on during the election. If you remember, again, it didn't truly end chain migration until 10, 15 years down the line. It didn't fully get rid of the visa lottery. It only reallocated the visas. It built the wall, but however, also never touched interior enforcement. And also, it did the amnesty for 1.8 million people. And the thing to remember about that is that number 1.8 was never in a bill. It would never be written in the statute. That's just an estimate of, 1.8 million people are possibly eligible. It could be 2.5.
What's your view?
2.5.
How did the Trump administration come up with this 1.8 million amnesty out of the blue? What did they think they were getting for it?
I think they just were trying to paint maybe the Democrats as being unreasonable, which they are on this issue, and kind of put them into a box of, hey, we're going to make a major concession on this issue. Let's see what you do. And regardless if you want to think it was some grand, political, calculated move that he did, which some people do, because he certainly did paint the Democrats as unreasonable and unwilling to give anything on this issue when he himself even moved to the middle. But I still think it was a grand mistake, because now what the administration did is now that 1.8 number, again, arbitrary number though, is the baseline. So now the House and Speaker Ryan, who is a little bit more pro-amnesty and pro-business on this issue, why is he going to go to the right of President Trump on this issue when President Trump gave him the cover to increase that amnesty? It's pretty puzzling.
So what's your prediction for the rest of the year?
Again, I'm personally in the camp of I don't think anything's going to happen. I'm seeing, as we're trying to see where things are in the Goodlatte bill in its existing form, I don't think it can pass in its existing form. And then if you look at the Senate, they are so far apart in the Senate and what they want to do here. But you never know. Republicans seem to always get squishy on this issue and want to wash their hands of it because they think they're going to be punished in the midterms if they don't give an amnesty, even though the president ran on this issue and won the presidency. It propelled him into office by advocating for, fundamental reforms to our immigration system. But then I personally think nothing's going to happen. This issue is going to be punted. Maybe it'll play out in the midterms. Democrats or Republicans will gain an advantage.
How can it be an issue Republicans use if the White House has already given all this ground?
Well, it can be an issue they use going forward they can go and finally tell the American people again that we didn't do an amnesty rather than the fact that they did do one. I think, doing nothing is much better than passing a bad amnesty bill that delivers nothing for the American people in return.
All right, well, looking forward to 2019, let's assume the Republicans hold the House and expand their margin in the Senate. Mm-hmm. Does that give the administration more wiggle room to actually get something good?
Yeah,
passed?
Of course, theoretically it would. They of course, any more breathing room when these margins are so tight are very helpful. But again, Republicans, even if you look at the map, even a very good showing for Republicans, I don't think would give them over 60 votes to get stuff across the finish line. You have to remember, Democrats are in lockstep on this issue. So say if the Democrats had 60, they'd get to pass anything they wanted. But you have so many Republicans that are basically, Democrats on this issue that are in line, with the Jeff Flake, Lindsey Graham kind of worldview that even if you have them, they don't even count to your majority, basically. So it's a tough situation. It's, good things can come out of the House, I believe, and there still is a possibility of the Goodlatte bill coming out or other reforms.
So if Trump is actually, during this period, enforcing the law, we're seeing some worksite enforcement, raids in California and all around the country, actually deterring illegal immigration, convincing folks they need to go back home. What's the argument for why do we need an amnesty? Why do we need to do anything right now if Trump has on the books all the laws he needs to enforce the darn law?
Well, why do we need?
Why do we want to pay the price of an amnesty?
Yeah,
just to get these laws enforced. They can enforce the law now.
Well, the other thing too is you have to remember it is still important to codify a lot of these reforms that need to be done in order to ramp up interior enforcement. And really make sure future administrations down the line don't do what Obama did, which is completely dismantle immigration enforcement and exempt broad populations of illegal immigration from any type of immigration enforcement. There is always the future of down the line, other administrations could come in and completely gut everything, and you want to prevent them from doing that. But you're right. However, why, why would we do an amnesty and not get all that in return? Or why would we do an amnesty, period, if a future administration can come down and do all that stuff?
Well, we had a good comment that said, well, why can't these people here illegally? Why don't they just stay in their homeland and do well there? Why do they come here? Why do we have to put up with this? Well, obviously they come here because they think they're going to get an advantage, a lower crime rate in their view. Maybe they think they can send money back home. Lots of reasons why people want to come here.
And also, no one can dispute that anybody who comes here, whether it's legally or illegally, will become better off. The question is, will the American people become better off? Is the person that's competing with a Mexican who just came over the border for a low-skilled job, are they better off when that person will do it for worse working conditions and lower wages? That person is not better off. That's not the question.
Yeah, it's interesting because elites today seem to have no regard for what's happening to the average American, particularly those with less education and skill, ones who are getting directly impacted. And they say, oh, you're doing the jobs Americans won't do. No, these jobs shouldn't be created if they're not going to pay the kind of wages that are needed. Also, the availability of a lot of low-skilled labor actually retards the development of robotics, AI, by destroying the markets for them when you have cheap labor substitutes. And it's funny, how is it that China and India and South Korea, and Japan, how do they maintain this technological edge? And they're competing with us now. China in particular, they don't rely on a lot of foreign workers to do this. This notion that we rely on foreign workers to do everything, whether it's picking cantaloupes or being at the latest cutting edge of AI, artificial intelligence, is really a debilitating concept in this whole debate.
And you brought up a good point again with preventing some technological advancements. You just look at the ag industry. What will incentivize a company or a farmer from moving towards more efficient, automated crop picking tools and everything when they can just pay people substandard wages to do that work? Of course, they're not going to go through the process, research, development to develop things that can make them bring from the fields a lot better than any worker can.
Yeah, we just had an Associated Press article move the other day that said the economy would collapse if we cut immigration. On our website, immigrationreform.com, which is FAIR's blog, is an excellent piece by Mark Venenzia, who's with the Immigration Reform Law Institute, that rebuts point by point the arguments made in the Associated Press. And there's also going to be a podcast with me and Mark, which will be posted soon. Lots of jobs are getting automated, Jose. Again, you're pointing out something very important. And yet the automation doesn't have a market if you have substitutes of cheap labor. When they talk about home health care and home assistance, those things can be handled soon by robotics. And the last thing we need to be doing, if you bring in somebody to work for $15,000 a year, you're essentially relying on subsidies by taxpayers to pay for that person. So there's no reason to be bringing in low-skilled labor. And yet the mainstream press, the financial press, are continually addicted to this idea. And that's what we see operating right now in the House in an effort to try to get improved enforcement, worksite enforcement, E-Verify, state and local, empower ICE to do the job. Big business is running the halls of Congress right now. And at the same time, RJ, tell us about some of the pressure that's being mounted to push this DACA amnesty. FAIR is out there trying to oppose this stuff, some of our allied groups. But there's a major push, the U.S. Catholic Conference, Conference of Bishops, and who else is pushing DACA?
Just basically, every big business group, every religious organization, and obviously, the well-funded opposition on this issue, well-funded by, Soros, Bloomberg, Zuckerberg. They have their own groups out there. They're really pounding the pavement. Of course, and, we've really swung above our weight here at FAIR on this issue, and a lot of that is attributed to your help. We've asked you to get involved. We feel like we're sounding the alarm every.
Oh yeah, but Mitch, good question. How do we move the ball forward on this? What do we do right now, RJ?
Well, again, right now it's just to keep reminding your elected officials what the issues are, what the priorities of the American people are. What is important to you in immigration policy? Remember, you are the key stakeholders in immigration policy. Not illegal aliens, not corporations, just the American people, how things affect you. Right now, I would say we don't have this big ask to come to you for. That might change in the next week or so. If we hear, oh gosh, and the alarm bells start going off, and I hear from contacts, again, that we must defeat some amnesty proposal, you guys have been great helping with us. Remember back in December, we said we need to stop this year-end DACA amnesty rush. People always get screwed in these December spending bills. People were doing a great job. We had hundreds of thousands of legislator contacts of you out there contacting your elected officials to move the needle and make your voice heard. Again, right now, we don't have that ask. That could change tomorrow. If we hear that, Mitch McConnell's ready to move forward with putting a DACA amnesty in the March 23rd omnibus, you can rest assured you'll have that text FAIR number up here, and we'll be getting our information out to you to make sure your voice gets heard.
Yeah, but that of course, just because we're in a bit of a quiet period here, doesn't mean it's not a bad idea to simply call the White House, remind them that Trump made promises in the campaign, and you're watching very closely, and you'd expect him to get off his butt and work with Congress basically oppose the bad ideas in Congress and push the good ideas that he promised the American people. Donald Trump owes that to the voters. E-Verify was an important component in this last election. The issue of protecting American jobs, American labor from illegal foreign competition and manipulation. There's been a little progress made, but right now Donald Trump has a lot more to deliver. And we need to keep up the pressure. Make sure the White House knows that you're watching him. All right? Anyway, that's all for us right now. RJ, thanks for joining me.
Thanks,
Dan. For all your great comments. You all made your points very clear on our comments section. I review them all. We'll read them all. And again, we're going to come back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about more specific feedback from you to help us do a better job. So stay tuned for more, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.